So a continuation of the previous lecture, let us see how we can create calculations within a pivot table. Now, some of you might have had the opportunity to click on field items and sets and create a calculated field here. Now, please don't do that. This is a legacy option and it doesn't work very well. To do this properly, we click on Power Pivot and we click on Measures and we click on New Measure. So measures utilize DAX functions. So if in the formula bar you write, let's say the letter D, you notice that the functions that you get are not Excel functions, but you'll find many more functions here because these are using DAX measures. So my table name is region. Let's say my measure name is target, and I want to create target for every single country. Let us say 1.1. To do this, we will say sum of sales multiplied by 1.1. And you immediately notice that in my field list, a FX button has appeared, which is called target. Now remember, this was not a part of my original data set. We have created a measure. And inside my pivot table as well, you can see the calculation is working now. Now let's say you want to find out the difference between the target and, let's say, last year achievement. We can click on measure and then new measure. Let's call this the difference. So I'll call this the diff. Now this is equal to the target minus the sum of my sales table sales. Now the reason we are writing the table name as well is because the field that you're selecting, in this case the sales column, has to be fully qualified. That means that the table name also has to be written. And when we press OK, again you notice that it tells us the difference as well. And this is great, right? Because this means that you can move things around and the calculations will always work. For example, if I put my country in rows and I put my region in column, you notice it still works. Everything works. That's the advantage of creating a calculation inside a pivot table, so that as in how the pivot changes, the calculations also keep pace with it. Now again, covering Power Pivot is absolutely beyond the scope of this course. I have a separate course on Power Pivot which covers DAX in a lot of detail. But for now, I just want to give you an introduction to at least one more function in addition to the one that we have just done to show you how these work. So let me remove my target and the diff as well. Now let's say that we want to create another column in which I want to show only the value for maybe Canada, right? So I want 311 to come in all these cells, which has a number of users. Maybe I want to find the difference of all the numbers from Canada or something like that. So we again click on measure and then we say new measure. Let's call this last year achievement for Canada only. And here we write calculate, and the expression is going to be the sum of sales, and the filter is going to be my country, which remember has to be equal to Canada. Now let's just understand what is happening. We are applying a filter on my data set. That means I'm only looking at Canada, and then I'm finding the sum of the sales column using a calculate function. And the moment we press OK, you notice that it gives us the value only for Canada. Now you might be wondering, but why do we want to do this? Again, like I said, there are a number of use cases wherein you want to see the number only for a particular item because that's how you want to present it to the client. DAX is a very complicated language. It is something you will have to pick up independently. And like I said earlier, dax.guide is one of the best websites that you can have a look at. Don't do this in a rush. You will have to spend a lot of time understanding how DAX works. But from a simple pivot table point of view, I would say that use DAX in the minimum level possible, which means that use DAX for simple calculations like, maybe creating a target, dividing a number by 100, things that you couldn't have done on a pivot table earlier. Of course, when you step over to more complicated examples in DAX, it becomes very powerful, as you could have seen. Excellent. So we have done a calculation on Power Pivot using DAX measures. and I'll see you for the next lecture.